So it seems like the global population is never going to reach 10 billion people. The most recent estimates from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation state that the population will probably peak in 2065 just shy of 10 billion at about 9.7 billion humans before steadily declining for the foreseeable future. Now, this is a sharp break from the later half of the 20th century when people thought that a population bomb was going to go off and that overpopulation would lead to famine and wars and be the defining issue of the 21st century. But it seems like the opposite problem is what we're going to actually have to look forward to: depopulation and declining global fertility. Now, why is this, and why did we get it so wrong? Well, the answer might just be the most important thing to ever happen to humans. Let me explain. So, as I'm sure you know, for the vast majority of human history, population growth was extremely slow. It wasn't until 1805 that there were 1 billion people on this planet at one time. This is because population was extremely limited by agriculture techniques and by very high death rates. But at the start of the Industrial Revolution, the population exploded. And in the last 200 years, we've gained over 7 billion people. Thanks to modern agriculture unlocking huge food surpluses and modern medicine allowing basically everybody to live to adulthood, the population grew at never before seen levels. It grew exponentially, and as I'm sure you can imagine, in the 1960s, there was no reason to believe that that trend was going to stop. Everybody thought that the world was going to become absolutely overrun with humans. But what actually happened is just as quickly as population growth exploded, it fell off a cliff. In the last 60 years, the population growth has shrunk so much that we're almost below pre-industrial levels. And at this rate, by the end of the century, it'll be in the negative. There will be fewer people in 2100 than there were in 2060. And I don't mean to be hyperbolic when I say this, but this is one of the biggest things to ever happen to humanity. This is basically the only time we know of in the history of life that a species has willingly decreased its own population. And I think what gets people here is that population growth is easy to understand. It's caused by a decline in death rates, an abundance of food, and its effect is a shortage of resources and competition for those remaining resources. But population decline is a lot weirder. Why would people not have kids, and what's going to happen because of it? Well, it's going to get really weird. Let me explain to you what I think the causes and effects of that are. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think population decline will be extremely difficult to grapple with. There is no stopping this train, right? You can claim that there are policy decisions that can be made to increase birth rates, and maybe that's true to some extent, but we see this happening in every single country in the world. I'm not kidding. Every single region on Earth, regardless of its initial prosperity, regardless of its government's policy, has seen its fertility rate decline over the last 60 years. So clearly, it's more than just a policy issue. Population decline doesn't just mean there are fewer workers and a smaller economy. It means that the people who are left are older on average, which means more people who are dependent on a smaller workforce to provide for them. This means a scarcity of resources. Paradoxically, population decline might cause more shortages than population explosion. And what gets me about population decline is that it's caused by several unambiguously good things. So we shouldn't just go back to the way things were done before. What's caused us to get here is an increase in availability of family planning methods, meaning people can decide when and if to have kids, a decrease in infant mortality, meaning that people don't need to have as many kids to have the same size families, and what I think is most important, an industrial economy, meaning that children are no longer an economic benefit to families. Let me explain that last one because I think it is by far and away the most important, and it's the reason we see this happening in every country in the world. So if you were born before about 1900, you were almost certainly going to be a subsistence farmer. This means that you had to grow your own food to survive. And when you're a subsistence farmer, it makes sense for you to have as many children as you possibly can because your family unit is your labor force, and every additional worker you have increases the amount of food you can grow and the amount of surplus you can grow, allowing you to sell some of the excess crop and develop wealth. But what happened when countries industrialized and people became richer is that they no longer were incentivized economically to have children. Children became, in effect, luxury goods. I know that sounds a little unhuman to say, but think about it. Nowadays, people can decide when to have kids and if they even want kids and what value kids bring to their life, because we're not sending children to work in our farms anymore. Kids can't work a 9 to 5. Kids can't work factory jobs anymore. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a great thing. I don't think we should be having kids so that we can force them to work on farms. But it does mean that across the world, fewer and fewer people are choosing to engage in the luxury of parenthood. And this means that many countries have seen their birth rates completely tank. South Korea's birth rate decreased 86% since 1950. The average South Korean woman is having less than one child over the course of her life. That has never been seen before in human history. And even in countries that aren't as developed, countries in sub-Saharan Africa like Ghana or in South Asia like Pakistan, we're seeing population decline as well. And this means that across the globe, populations in every single country are going to continue to get older and fewer children are going to continue to be born. Now, how do you deal with this? Well, if there was an easy solution, some country probably would have done it by now. But it's seeming like the only way out of the population decline problem is through, and that eventually, at some point on the other side of the population curve, when the present day large generations eventually start to pass away, we will reach an equilibrium. But where that will be, nobody knows. And what problems it will have in the meantime are really hard to forecast. So all that being said, if you ever hear anybody talking about population explosion like it's a bad thing, remind them that we're not in the 1960s anymore, and that in 10 or 20 years, we might be wishing we had some population growth. Let me know what you think about this issue in the comments below, because it is far from a settled issue, and let me know what geography or society topic you think we should discuss next. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for a video about the geopolitics of the United States coming very soon. Bye.